Wait a minute, that's not right.
The story is finished, the damage has been controlled, and a cash-in at Lincoln Financial. And a new contender emerges after a questionable decision. It's WrestleMania Night 2 in the Raw After Mania. Okay! In the news indeed. It was the main event of Night 2 of WrestleMania. We had Roman Reigns coming in as champion for 1,316 days. Now, of course, we know he always cheats, gets help from the Bloodline to win, and quite frankly, never shows up anymore. But nonetheless, that long of a reign is quite impressive. And he hadn't lost a singles match since January of 2022 when he lost by disqualification to Seth Rollins. And then on the other side, your back-to-back Royal Rumble champion Cody Rhodes came in at 14-2 in one-on-one matches since losing to Reigns a year ago. Now this match just had everything in it. It's almost too much to go through, so let's quickly knock it out. We had both sides landing each other's finishers. Of course, Roman Reigns complained after hitting the crossroads, saying just how weak it was. We saw Rhodes hit a couple of spears on Reigns, including one through a barricade. And of course, we saw everybody show up, just as expected. As you would guess, Jimmy Uso kicked it off when he came in and landed a super kick on Cody Rhodes. And then, of course, Jey Uso came out to make the save. Jimmy ran up the ramp, and Jey, an amazing spear over the ramp and into the WWE Universe. But from there, you know who was coming next. It was Solo Sikoa. He came in and hit Rhodes with a Samoan spike. But knowing that wouldn't be just enough, Sikoa yelled at Reigns to hurry up and get up. And they came in with their combo finisher of a spear Samoan spike. Somehow Rhodes still found a way to get up. But at that point, we heard the music of the greatest of all time, John Cena. And he came out and got some revenge on Solo for his loss at Crown Jewel, giving an AA to Sikoa right through the Spanish announce table. At this point, the final boss had seen enough and came down and gave a rock bottom to John Cena to get him out of the picture. At this point, we heard the Shield's music hit. We haven't heard that since Reigns fought Rollins back at the Royal Rumble in 2022. But as much as we could have hoped for Dean Ambrose to make a return, I guess he's still happily in retirement. And Seth Rollins came out alone with a steel chair. Reigns saw Rollins and he Superman punched him right out of the ring. So just when The Rock was going to whip Rhodes with the belt, we heard the gong and The Undertaker showed up behind The Rock. When The Rock finally turned around, The Undertaker gave Rock a thunderous chokeslam to clear the ring. The lights went out, came back on, and The Undertaker was gone. At this point, Roman Reigns saw the chair that Rollins had brought in laying on the mat. He picked it up, looked at both Rhodes and Rollins, and he couldn't help himself, and he smashed Rollins in the back with the chair, just as Rollins had done to him all those many years ago to break up the Shield. However, this gave Rhodes the perfect opening that he needed. He landed 3 crossroads, pinned Reigns, 1, 2, 3 on the mat, and we have a new WWE Universal Champion. It was an amazing end to the story, but that wasn't the only match of WrestleMania Sunday. First we have a couple other championship matches. Now actually kicking off night 2 of WrestleMania was Drew McIntyre facing the champion Seth Rollins. Now McIntyre came into the match on an absolute tear. He had been 7-1 in 2024 since losing to Rollins on day 1, with his only loss being in the Royal Rumble itself. And Rollins, it was just his second match since returning from his knee injury, which may have still played a factor here, because right off the bell, McIntyre landed a devastating Claymore that you thought could have knocked Rollins out. McIntyre landed 4 different Claymores, but Rollins also had his way. He landed 2 pedigrees and 3 different stomps himself, including a stomp onto the announce table. And in the end, Rollins threw McIntyre back into the ring after the 3rd stomp onto the announce table, but that gave Drew just enough time to muster up the power for that 4th Claymore and become the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. But that wasn't all. McIntyre celebrated like there was no tomorrow, and he went up to CM Punk on the announce table and started jaw-jacking at him. After several minutes, he finally stepped down off the table, and it was at that moment that CM Punk took advantage and swept Drew's legs out from under him. He then took off his arm brace and slapped him with it, and then kicked him a couple more times before Senor Money in the Bank, Damian Priest, came out, hit Drew in the face with the briefcase, and then cashed it in, going to the middle of the ring and landing one south of heaven chokeslam to become the new World Heavyweight Champion. That ended up being just the 2nd ever Money in the Bank cash-in at WrestleMania, following Rollins several years ago. So we had one other championship match, and that was for the WWE Women's Championship between Io Sky and Bayley. For Io, this was just her 3rd match of 2024 and her first title defense since the first SmackDown of the year. For Bayley, since winning the Royal Rumble, she only had 2 matches. First being the tag match where Dakota turned her back on her, and the second where she beat Dakota on March 15th. And this was Bayley's first opportunity at a world title since losing it in October of 2020. This ended up being a really great match where Io focused on Bayley's right knee and landed several moonsaults. Io also impressively avoided a rose plant by somehow flipping while getting thrown down onto the mat. Bayley, however, would not be denied in this one to get her revenge. She hit a devastating clothesline, elbow drop, rose plant trifecta that Io just couldn't kick out of, and Bayley became your new champion. And in our final title match, we have the US Championship between Logan Paul, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton. For Logan, this was just his 2nd title defense since winning the championship at Crown Jewel in November. For KO, since losing to Paul at the Royal Rumble, he was 2-1 in singles competition with his lone loss inside the Elimination Chamber. And then lastly, for Randy Orton, he had won all 4 one-on-one matches in 2024, but lost both of his multi-purpose matches at the Rumble and inside the Chamber. Funniest part of this match was when Kevin Owens took a golf cart down to the ramp and then went back up to get Orton to help him out so he didn't have to walk himself. And these two ended up being partners for the first several minutes of the match. But finally, after the Viper attempted an RKO on Owens, these two started fighting as well. And this ill-fated partnership gave Paul a chance to get back into the match. As always, he brought out the brass knuckles and landed big rights on both Orton and Owens. However, Orton was able to grab the knuckles and hand them to the ref and RKO Paul. Fortunately for Logan, the Prime Bottle mascot was able to pull him outside the ring before he could get punted. Eventually, Orton countered a pop-up powerbomb attempt and landed an RKO on Owens. However, Paul took advantage and immediately threw Orton into the ring post, stealing the pin and retaining the United States Championship. On top of these championship matches, we also had a few other matches on the card, the first of which being the long-standing rivalry between the Final Testament and Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. Now, this feud may feel like it's gone on forever, but somehow we've only seen 3 matches between these groups. 2 one-on-one victories for Lashley over Cross, one way back in December and the other in March, and then also a tag team victory for the Street Profits over AOP in March. This, however, was the first 3-on-3 matchup. It ended up being pretty even until Karrion Kross complained about a slow 3 count by special guest referee Bubba Ray Dudley. Now, I'll say this count didn't look especially slow to me. It seemed pretty fair. But from that point on, Bubba Ray put on the glasses and helped Lashley and the Street Profits to get the tables and have Ford splash Cross through the table to get the victory. And then our final blood rivalry of the night between LA Knight and AJ Styles. Now these were two wrestlers that seemed to be going in opposite directions. LA Knight came out on a pretty good winning streak, being 3-1 in action in 2024, with his only loss being due to interference that he had nothing to do with. AJ Styles, on the other hand, has been 0-3-1 in singles matches in 2024. Styles would take an early advantage and control most of the fight by using the same tactic that Io would do later in the night by attacking Knight's left knee. Styles did control most of the match, but Knight had a few timely moves by stopping both a springboard 450 and a phenomenal forearm that gave him the opening to land a BFT for the win. So that covers all of our amazing Night 2 of WrestleMania matches, but there were still plenty to go on the Raw after WrestleMania. In the main event of the night, we saw a fatal four-way to determine the new #1 contender for Damian Priest's World Championship. The match featured Bronson Reed, Ricochet, Jey Uso, and a very upset Drew McIntyre. Now in the middle of the match, quick highlights, we saw Bronson Reed stop Jey Uso's spear attempt right in his tracks and then put Jey through a table. Then Drew McIntyre chopped Ricochet so hard that he landed and fell into the first row. We also had a super kick fest where just about everybody ended up taking a super kick from someone else, mostly with McIntyre and Reed taking the brunt of the damage. Ricochet even landed an amazing 450 splash onto Reed to put him through the Spanish announce table. Near the very end of the match, Drew hit Jey with a future shock DDT and he was setting up for a Claymore, but CM Punk came out of nowhere and grabbed Drew's foot, which allowed Jey the opportunity to pin Drew after hitting a super kick, then a spear, and an Uso splash to get the win. Jey is now your new #1 contender, and he's won 4 straight matches and gets his first world title shot since December. McIntyre, on the other hand, had won 7 matches in a row, including at WrestleMania, but has now 2 straight losses in just over 24 hours. Ricochet had also won 3 straight one-on-one matches on Raw, but lost 2 multi-purpose matches in Philadelphia. Bronson Reed looked to be turning things around with his Battle Royal win on Friday night, but he now falls to 2-6 in singles matches in 2024. We didn't really have any other matches of great significance on the show, but we did get a few surprises along the way, like we do every year on the Raw after WrestleMania. The opening match featured Shinsuke Nakamura against Ilya Dragunov, your NXT champion. Now this was Dragunov's first match on the main roster, and he looked awfully good doing it, hitting several signature moves, including the Torpedo Moscow to get the win. Nakamura, on the other hand, after being left off the WrestleMania card, continued his downward spiral, falling to 1-7 in singles matches in 2024. Another NXT superstar making their Raw debut was Roxanne Perez, your NXT Women's Champion, and she faced off against Indy Hartwell. Indy lost her focus after her partner Candice LeRae grabbed her feet to get the distraction while the ref wasn't looking. However, Indy wasn't too happy about this, and it gave Roxanne the opening to feed her some pop rocks to get the win. This unfortunately dropped Indy's overall Raw record to 0-8 in singles contests. Speaking of women's matches, we had Jade Cargill make her Raw debut against Chelsea Green. Jade took a mere few seconds to land a kick and then her jaded finisher to get the win. Chelsea has not won a singles match now since November and hasn't won any match in 2024, including several tag matches, dropping to 0-7. Speaking of tag matches, we saw the Awesome Truth and the Guy You Can't See take on the Judgment Day. Now, there was a celebration by the Judgment Day for Priest and Ripley winning their championship matches. But R-Truth decided to crash the party when he came in from behind them and raised his new Raw Tag title to the air, saying that he brought the Raw Tag title back to the Judgment Day. So, The Miz came out to join Truth to help him out so he wouldn't get beaten up. But the Judgment Day ended up doing that anyways after Truth said he'd bring out the Guy You Can't See. This turned out into a 2-on-3 handicap match after the commercial break. However, after a short while, the greatest of all time, John John Cena's music hit, and he came out, got the tag, and the three of them together each hit the 5 moves of doom and got the win for the Awesome Truth and Cena. This was the first tag match for both of these 3-man units, even for the Judgment Days, Dominic, JD, and Balor. So we had one other tag match from the impromptu team of Sami Zayn and Chad Gable versus Imperium. Now, Sami Zayn was out there thanking the crowd for helping him win the championship when Imperium came out and said some not very nice things about those same fans. Just as the Imperium was surrounding Zayn in the ring, Chad Gable came out and decided to lend a hand. This turned into that tag match. Of course, it was the first match with Zayn and Gable as a tag team, but it didn't take long as Gable carried most of the offense for the match, with both Zayn and Gable hitting simultaneous triple German suplexes along the way. Finally, Zayn landed a haluva kick and he let Gable get the finishing touch with a Chaos Theory. This dropped Vinci and Kaiser down to 1-4-1 in tag matches in 2024. Lastly, let's do a quick few notes beyond the mat. Triple H kicked off the show by playing a touching video tribute for Cody's victory, but soon The Rock came out and told Cody that he's leaving for now, but when he returns, The Rock is coming for him. Let's all hope that this happens sooner rather than later. Later on, we saw Dom and Rhea backstage talking, and Dom went to go talk to Pierce about Andrade. But as soon as he left, Liv threw a chair and hit Rhea in the back of the head and then continued attacking her in the hall until several people came in to break it up. So of course, this means Liv, instead of being suspended, will probably get a title shot out of it. We saw a quick vignette showing that Sheamus is apparently coming back pretty soon, but we don't know exactly when. And finally, the WWE Draft will be taking place on SmackDown April 26th and on Raw April 29th. So we did see 4 championship matches on WrestleMania, so let's talk about who's next. For the WWE Universal Champion, we have Cody Rhodes finishing the story and probably moving over to SmackDown, where this title has been held mostly dormant because Reigns never shows up. However, let's go over the top contenders, and of course, it has to be Roman Reigns as number 1. Since he held the title for 1,316 days, I guess we need to give him a rematch if he wants to have one right now. Our second top contender, Bobby Lashley. Since returning in October, he's now 6-1 in one-on-one matches, and even got a win at WrestleMania. He's ahead of the next guy because he hasn't had a WWE title match since he lost his title in the Elimination Chamber in February 2022. He certainly earned another chance. And third, we'll go with LA Knight. With his WrestleMania win, he's now 4-1-1 in 2024 one-on-one matches. And he's 6-1-1 overall since his loss to Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel. We'll stay right here on SmackDown for the WWE Women's World Championship. Hopefully, Bayley can put damage control behind her, but I think she's gonna have to deal with Io one more time. Io had 6 successful title defenses since winning the title at SummerSlam, so we're gonna give her one more shot at a rematch. Number 2, Bianca Belair. She just re-won the title at SummerSlam when Io cashed in on her with the Money in the Bank briefcase. Bianca lost her rematch to Io at Crown Jewel, but it was because Kyrie rejoined the WWE, interfered to help Io win. However, Bianca is now 4-0 in one-on-one matches since, and picked up a win at WrestleMania. And our third and final contender, Tiffany Stratton. Tiffany is off to an amazing start on the main roster. She is 5-0 in one-on-one matches since arriving on SmackDown. However, she inexplicably got left off the WrestleMania card. Let's hope that she gets back in action very soon. Our final SmackDown championship to talk about today is the United States Championship. Logan Paul amazingly survived a massive uphill battle at WrestleMania. But I think the Viper will still seek some revenge after eating the brass knuckles and Paul stealing the pin from him at WrestleMania. So Randy Orton is our #1 contender for this title. He is 6-0 in one-on-one matches since returning from injury in November and hasn't yet gotten a one-on-one chance at Logan. Our second top contender, Santos Escobar. If he's finally ready to turn the page on the LWO, he's a nice 6-2 in one-on-one matches since December 1st, 2023. And our third and final contender, we're still going to give it to Kevin Owens. He's moved down the list after losing to Logan Paul twice for the US title, but he only lost the first match after using the brass knuckles because Paul had introduced them himself. So he may have won that match without getting disqualified if the brass knuckles were not involved. And KO is also 7-0 in one-on-one matches against everybody else other than Logan Paul since November. So perhaps he can still get one more crack at the title. And with that, let's go to everybody's favorite segment, What Were You Thinking? We have this beautiful pillow playing the role of main event Jey Uso. Jey had just hit a super kick on Big Bronson Reed when Reed was stunned and Jey set up to crash Bronson through a table that was set up in the corner of the ring. Now Jey went for the spear, but Big Bronson Reed was so big that he just stuffed him in his tracks, picked up Jey, carried him over to the ropes, and knocked Ricochet off the apron. He continued carrying him, and he crashes Jey Uso through the table. So surely, Big Bronson Reed, looking for his first ever world championship, pulls out Jey from the ropes and pins him 1, 2, 3. Well, that's what he should have done. Instead, Reed mean mugs at the camera, looks around, then sees Jey laying lifeless, just like this pillow, and finally kicks him down to the ring floor. Now mind you, this entire time, from when Jey went through the table until he hit the floor outside the ring, was 34 seconds. And who else was in the ring in this fatal four-way this entire 34 seconds? No one! Ricochet had just been knocked out from the apron by Reed, and Drew was nowhere in sight. So Big Bronson Reed, you had all the time in the world to become the #1 contender, and you did nothing. So Big Bronson Reed, what were you thinking? Doc, making me come up with 2 questions in one weekend? Well, I guess that's reasonable for Wrestlemania. Anyways, in the Bloodline rules match for the championship, why wouldn't all of the members of the Bloodline just start at ringside? We know they're going to help out anyways, so they might as well just be there. And that's a good one, Sports Zoo. I think that's the age-old question here. Well, first, let me tell you what I think it wasn't. It wasn't Roman Reigns having confidence in himself to be able to beat Cody Rhodes one-on-one. We haven't seen Roman beat anybody cleanly for about 2 years now, so certainly, even though he may look good, he hasn't been in ring shape since only showing up sporadically. I think we can eliminate that one off the table, that Roman actually thought he was going to win. So let's talk about what it could have been instead. I think the first one is the element of surprise was important to the Bloodline. I think everybody knew that the Bloodline would interfere at some point in this match. I mean, it was a Bloodline rules match. There were basically no rules at all in this one. So the Bloodline was going to come in. They were going to help Roman as much as they could. And, you know, why wouldn't you just be there at the beginning? So I think it all has to do with surprise. If they had just been out there from the beginning, Cody and all of his friends also would have been there from the beginning. So that would have pretty much evened things out right off the bat. We want to get that advantage from Jimmy coming out, and we want to get that advantage from Sikoa coming out that Team Rhodes was not just ready for. But you know what? I want to enter one more thought as well. I think the Wise Man's and the Rock's egos were just too big as well. Heyman has been orchestrating these run-ins for the Bloodline for all this time, ever since Roman came back. So it's worked every time for him now, so why would he change it up and have everybody stand there at ringside? And also The Rock, he just had a big match the last night. He was the big winner, picking up the pin over Rhodes. So He didn't want to get his hands dirty again. He just wanted to waltz out there to the ring, have the belt in his hand, and then start whipping Cody and hand it to Mama Rhodes once the Bloodline was victorious. Those are my 2 thoughts for this week's OK question of the week. And as always, let's end with our STFs. Suspensions, terminations, and fines. First, for WrestleMania Night 2, we had a Philadelphia street fight, and we of course had the Bloodline rules match. Neither of those have any fines or penalties of any sort, as all the outside activity there was legal. However, in the opening match for the World Heavyweight Championship, we saw CM Punk and Drew McIntyre get into it at the announce desk after the match. And of course, even though he was greatly being provoked, CM Punk ended up attacking McIntyre and using his arm brace to knock him down and further kick him. This allowed Priest to cash in his Money in the Bank, where Priest first used the briefcase to hit Drew in the head. So both Punk and Priest are going to get fines for these attacks. And I think both of them would say it was very, very worth it. Now, when we go to Raw the next night, we have a couple of other incidents. First, Punk again grabbed Drew's leg in the Fatal 4-Way match. This, of course, was completely legal in a Fatal 4-Way, no disqualification, so no fine for Punk this time. He can laugh for the second straight night. Early on, we had all men of the Judgment Day attack the Awesome Truth after Truth told the Judgment Day that the man they can't see was going to come out and be their third tag team partner. So we've got Dominic, we've got JD, we've got Damian, and we've got Finn all picking up fines for this attack. Then we had Indy Hartwell versus Roxanne Perez, and Candice LeRae kept up her recent trickery where she swiped out Roxanne's feet during the match. Even though Indy wasn't a fan of Candice doing that on her behalf, Candice still did it. And in fact, it ended up hurting Indy. However, Candice, you're still getting a fine. And lastly, and the biggest one of the night, Liv Morgan backstage threw a chair and hit Rhea Ripley in the back of the head and then continued to beat on her in the hallway. Now, amazingly enough, this is going to give her a title shot, probably a Backlash. However, if it were done correctly, instead of that title shot, she is going to be suspended for 1 week. So there you have it with the STFs of the week. Triple H said this WrestleMania was the best by every metric. Hopefully, we can look back at this and remember the feeling we had when we saw Cody finish the story. Until then, let's wait and see what will be written in the first chapter of the next story. I'm Dr. O'Kay, reporting on the WWE, where everything is okay!